You're a part of it. You're already a part of it. Because I've been recording for 15 minutes.
What?
Boom. Mic drop.
Beautiful, don't you think?
What?
The sunrise. Terrific.
Houston, Dr. Stone is off structure. Listen to my voice. You need to focus. I'm losing visual of you.
I'm spinning. I can't breathe.
Grab a hole. Grab anything.
What do I do? What do I do? Anybody, please copy.
Welcome, everybody, to the special edition of The Next Reel, the Film Board. This is Film Board, what is this, 15? 15 times we've gotten together to do this. I know, right? I'm Pete Wright, and Andy Nelson's there.
Hello, hello.
And we got Steve Sarmento.
Hello.
And Tommy Metz.
Hello, it's me. I'm sick.
Well,
I feel like I should tell people that.
I mean, you're just, it's like, I feel like it's probably a good idea, but, you know, they can't, it's not like you're out there kissing people.
Well,
just
I'm kissing them over the airwaves.
I hope they don't get pod sick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pod contagious.
We have gathered here today to take on Gravity. We were going to take on a different movie. The whole plan was to take on The Counselor, but a couple of us went to see it, not me, and said it was not worth talking about. It's the first time that we have actually changed directions because the movie was apparently so bad.
Called an audible.
Yeah, we did. That's what that is. That's if we were into sports. That's what we would have done.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I actually don't have any friends that are into sports.
That was a touchdown.
So this is the, obviously, 2013. Oh, we're a little bit late on this. It opened October 4th. And it's Alfonso Cuaron, written by Alfonso Cuaron and Jonas Cuaron, his son. And we've got with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney and Ed Harris, but mostly Sandra Bullock. And the omniscient cameraman.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that guy seems to be just everywhere.
Where would does he get really small too?
He sure does. This was well, okay. Where would you like to start, gentlemen? We have lots of things to talk about with this film. Where would you like to start? What struck you as? Why did this movie strike you as it did? Tom.
Okay. This movie, I'm a big. I think I've maybe gotten a bad call for this, but I'm actually am a big sci-fi fan, or at least a sci-fi horror fan. This film made space feel so scary in a way that other films have just sort of tried to. That usually, like, space films are involved with, like, finding a haunted ship, or our ship is slowly breaking down or something, but space is horrifying, and the fact that we have the courage to go in there has never really meant as much to me until seeing this film. I thought this film was remarkably well done, and it gave me nightmares. Am I making sense? I'm on NyQuil.
No, I think you're totally making sense, and I would just add to that. Because that was one of my notes, that, you know what, we don't need aliens. We don't need we don't need any sort of
meteor
ships or meteors. Space is scary on its own, right? Space itself is a scary thing, and I got this was an extremely familiar feeling to me. This was the same feeling I got watching The Abyss. Now, even in The Abyss, we had the alien kind of a gig, right? But for me, that sequence in the submarine, ironically, with Ed Harris and what's her name, when they had to do the drowning bit, right?
Yeah.
Tell me you didn't feel that way about the ocean.
Right.
the way you felt about space in this film. That is the feeling that I got the entire time in this movie. The setting itself was such an unbelievable character in this film that I was really moved by it.
Which is another note to bring up later for this film.
Let's do that.
Okay.
You're in charge of footnotes.
I'm making a bibliography as we speak.
Mr. NyQuil is in charge of footnotes.
Also, I can smell colors.
All right, Steve.
We're talking about just sort of initial response or draw to this film, and it was one that, the simplicity of the story is one of the first things that I walked away from, is that it was just tell a really simple story, but tell it really well. And we can talk about the tools that are used to tell that story, the sound and camera work. But from the first time I saw the first teaser trailer to this, I thought this is going to be an interesting film. What do we do with just a small cast floating in outer space? How do we keep this audience interested for this amount of time? And it did it well, through the performances and just a very simple story that, I think brought, something new. And, as we're speaking, I think it's been number one, box office film for like 3 consecutive weeks. So obviously there's something that people are drawn to in this story. We can talk about special effects and all that, but at the core, there's something to this character and the story that we endure or are immersed in for about 90 minutes of our time. And I think it's just something, again, to not say, oh, this is a fluke, these films don't happen. It's just when you can come up with a very simple story and find the right tools to tell it, in the most effective way possible. And that's what this film does.
Andy.
Ooh, that was awesome.
I know, right? I felt like I didn't want to even follow up on that.
I just want to say what he said. but really, I think playing with kind of what Tom started also, I think space has been so made into something so deceptively wrong for us over the years that I don't think I've ever really experienced what space is really like, because of, in a real way, my entire life growing up watching any sort of sci-fi films, space is really nothing more than dog fights up in the sky is really kind of what it's come down to. I mean, there are a few films like 2001 that do something a little different with space, but for the most part, like the sci-fi films that I grew up watching, it really is just dog fights, and that's kind of what space has been. And it's not really done in a way that feels realistic. And, I think Sunshine is another recent film that we've talked about, Pete, that I think does work at trying to make it as realistic as possible. Now, it's a different type of film. It's not dealing with the same sort of issue of just survival. In a sense it is, but in a totally different survival sense. This is just trying to survive a mishap as opposed to, saving the Earth. But you don't ever get that real visceral sense of being there. The IMAX 3D watching this in that way, I think really helped immerse me in that and really made me feel like I am actually out in space watching these filmmakers make a movie in space. That's just what it felt like. And I've never really felt that way. And I've never been so physically rattled while watching a movie, where literally there were times where I was practically crawling out of my seat because I could barely contain myself from what was actually happening on the screen. It just, I don't think I've ever really experienced that. So, and then all of everything that Steve just said, tying in this story of, this survival, and then you've got this amazing character arc of this character as she really is reborn. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but I really enjoyed the way they tied all of that together in an amazing sci-fi film that also had a nice character change over the course of it.
I agree with that. I think this movie, one of the notes I had made early on was that this movie is really vastly grander than the sum of its parts. I feel like as soon as I started talking about it, and talking about it to the family, and I took my daughter who's 11 years old, and I think this movie it's one of these films that it's big because the trailers are big, and it just looked like there was a lot of press about it. It was big, what they did, it was so spectacular, and got to see it in IMAX. But it's also at the same time a small film. It's an intimate film, right? It's a singular sort of character journey, to find home for her in a number of different contexts. And I was worried as we got into that this would be kind of an adult film, an adult journey that she would not appreciate. And boy, I was really surprised at just how well she connected with this, with Sandra Bullock's character and what she was going through, even as much as the overall sort of the overall kind of action sequences. I think there is a lot to connect to in this film, both on its small kind of scale, the emotional resonance that I think it comes through, and the grand scale, the setting, and just the way they portray space. So I would agree with you.
It's kind of a haunted house film in a way that it's so contained.
Yes.
Like there's just like I like to repeat everything that I've heard, and pretend that it's my point. That it's just it's just people caught, but it's the hugest haunted house in the world.
Well, it is, and it's extremely linear, right? It's almost on rails, from set piece to set piece, and in between each major set piece is kind of a road trip. We have the road trip movie, sequence when they're trying to get to the International Space Station. They get to have their little conversation.
The slowest road trip.
It is the slowest road trip ever, and yet it's you get these sort of touching moments that are between these two characters, and I think that's. It is paced as linear as it is. It's paced in such a way that I did not find myself bored at any point.
No, the one thing that kept the momentum going is, and I thought it was very craftfully done, was the movie. They set up sort of a ticking clock. The debris comes by, and it's going to come by again in a certain amount of time. So it lends itself a sense of urgency. But what we don't get is those typical shots of she set a timer, but we don't cut back to that every so often of I've only got 5 minutes, I've only got 2 minutes, and this sort of building that artificially through cutting to the clock, and is she going to get there? But it did keep in the back of your mind, she's got to keep moving, she's got things she needs to get done, and it sets it up. But I didn't feel that it was used to create overly hyped urgency. It felt like a nice balance to that we have a reason for things to be occurring and for her to move forward, but not at the filmmakers didn't, I feel like, manipulate us.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because you knew that there was a bomb under the desk, but they didn't keep cutting to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we saw different movies.
Wasn't there a bomb under a desk?
What?
Oh, NyQuil. I'm also going to confuse this with the counselor. Throughout
which is a sad comparison.
Yeah, is that as Chekhov said.
Let's. Can we talk about the script? Can we go from the inside out a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on generally the writing and specifically the portrayal of Sandra Bullock's Dr. Ryan?
I have a thing to say, but it might be spoilery.
No, spoil it. People should know by now. Oh, we didn't actually say it. Hold on. We spoil movies on this podcast. So,
and starting here, this movie's going to be
starting now. It's going to be spoiled.
Right.
Please. Spoil
Bruce
away.
Willis was the ghost. All right. I think I've made that joke literally every single time. I'm starting to get tired. I liked it. I thought the script was. I would be really interested in reading the screenplay because it seems like it would be 60 pages long at most, because there's so much time without dialogue, which is kind of interesting to me. But past that. I thought it was good. I thought the sometimes it was a little bit simplistic. The only real problem that I have, and I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap it up. The only real problem that I had was, and I think I put this in my Film Buddies notes, which was they've been up there. How long have they been up there?
A week.
They said
a
week.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, a week. That's better than that, but still a week. And while George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, astronauts, are going on their little let's not talk a bunch because we have to save our breath, but instead let's have a whole lot of talking. He says, "Where are you from? And what's your family like?" That was the only thing. Like, I get that that we're like all doing this in real time, but it was kind of like, what have you guys been talking about for a week? You're in space. Like, are you just playing the movie game? Are you just playing Build a Title? Like, what are you doing? You're just talking about nonsense, or just saying things like copy that and Roger. It was just like, I know that that's a thing that the film had to do, but I was wondering if there was a little bit of a more elegant way to do it than just literally like, we've just met conversation.
See, that didn't bother me because I took that as the, experienced veteran who knows how to cope with a rookie who's starting to lose it, and to sort of bring her back, get her focused on something else. And yes, it is that here's this exposition, here's some background on this character we need to get out for story purposes. It didn't feel contrived to me because it was sort of framed in the aspect of she needs to get recentered and focus on what's important. And she's, hyperventilating. She's focused on all these other things and just spinning out of control physically and mentally. And it was to help get her focused on something singular. And so that's how I took it.
I absolutely agree with that. Then what I would have wanted him to say was, "Tell me again. Where down here are you from?"
Yeah.
It could have been so easy. Just tell me again. Tell me your story again. Walk me through it. That kind of a thing. Versus it just seemed like they had just met.
Well,
your point is very strong.
Because it's not only that they had just been up in space for a week. They've been training together for months. Right? I mean,
well, it didn't sound like she had been training with them in particular, because he was asking her like, how long did she train for this stuff, and it sounded like they were kind of training separately for the mission.
Yeah,
but I still can see the point that you're making, Tom. I fall into the camp where it didn't really bug me because I liked that element of the story, but I can totally see your point.
I'm just being a bitch because I'm on micro.
Well, and Tom, I think part of that would be some refinement to the screenplay that could have occurred. But getting back to your point of the screenplay was maybe 60 pages long, it may have been even shorter because I feel like almost George Clooney's entire part could have been improvised because he was Clooney. He was playing George Clooney, and you've seen interviews with him. So Clooney. So give him a few points, and he's going to improvise, and then you've got Ed Harris doing, Ed Harris from Apollo 13. So did you need to script that? No, not really. So I don't know how much of it was actually, dialogue scripted out versus, to me, it could have been improvised, and that may be where we end up with some of those pieces, because it is a really simple story. And I think, that would be something I would be really interested to see, because to me, the strength of it is really in the sort of the visual structure. And what I would see is more interesting is actually sort of the notes of the camera pieces, how the camera moves, because that's really how the story is told, not so much through the dialogue, but through that camera and where it goes. And when we've got singular long tracking shots, when we've got camera movement, how it's moving, where the camera actually is placed. To me, those are the things that are telling the story more than any of the dialogue that the characters are really given.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
you're exactly right. And I really didn't mean to sound negative. I think because I was given, because someone asked like what it was, like I felt the need to like put something out that was sort of, niggling in me a little bit. But I mean,
But you know what, Tom?
I agree.
You know what? You're not alone. And that was my point too. I mean, I felt like this was a film that felt very much written by someone who doesn't know very many like 40-plus-year-old women. Like it just seemed like both, and I should say both for Clooney and for Sandra Bullock, that these characters were not just archetypes but stereotypes of what these kind of grown-ups would act like, and you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of this was Alfonso Cuarón versus his son, and you know, I don't know, but my sense was as soon as we get into, you know, starting about the road trip, and I had some of the same problems with you know, hey, I'm a physician and doctor, and I should probably know more about, you know, the effects of oxygen on the body and things like that. But
let me teach you how to breathe.
Yeah, right. Right. I mean, there were some sequences like that I had initial trouble with, but then you get some of the internal kind of the characterization of Sandra Bullock and who she is and where she comes from, and it just felt a touch overwrought, and in particular sequences like you know, the backlit fetal float, you know, I felt was just a touch on the nose. Like, I get the rebirth, I really do, and you're taking me on a journey, and now I mean, why do you have to like really like duct tape me down to make sure I get it? Like, I'm already there, and so there were sequences like that just felt like too much, and so that's why it gets me back to this film being so much more of a than the sum of its parts, because I didn't find the script all that compelling, and like I'd written in my notes, like this is a story that really could have been told. The story could have been told in the woodshed. I mean, it's got all the archetypes in it. We've got the journey, we've got the rebirth from fire, we've got the you know, the mythic quest, the death and rebirth. I mean, we've got all the major tropes. And so now we're celebrating it through the omniscient cameraman, and that ends up being what makes it special.
But still makes it really, really special. Like,
really,
I want to make sure that we all know that
special.
really, really special. Like, I feel like, I just don't want to sound like
it's obscenely special. It is really special. This is like a major all thumbs up on this film.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be Johnny Hates.
But that's
gravity.
that's also why I feel like I want to pull apart a little bit of the stuff that I think when we look at it critically, there are things in this film that I'm, you know, that are worth, you know, addressing.
Yeah, Andy and Steve, come on.
No.
Kool-Aid.
Let me clarify. There were two moments in this film where I was pulled out for a second and stepped back and said, this bothers me.
Okay, what
and
were
so
they?
There was one was when she, you know, again, was getting a spoiler territory, when she has to let, you know, Matt Kowalski go. She's got to cut the tether. Okay, you're in outer space, and I've thought either he's got a secret jetpack, or what is this? What is pulling him so much? He's being sucked into a black hole.
Let me explain that. Because I watching it twice. I figured out what it is. And I know even in Entertainment Weekly, people were like, that made no sense. If they had come to a complete stop, yes, she could have just given him a tug and he would have come right back. The thing is that they had not stopped. They were still moving. The strings on that parachute were all kind of slithering around her foot, and and Matt had not stopped. They were both still going away from the ship. And if he didn't let go, they both would have been kept. They would have kept getting pulled. Yeah. They would not have stopped. So the only way that she could have stopped and stayed is by him letting himself go. So that kind of slungshot her back to the ship.
But see, that doesn't make sense, because if she had just pulled, then it would have overcome whatever
it wouldn't have, because inertia
was keeping him going.
Away.
Right, but there. Okay.
But she didn't have the inertia to pull him back, because she was also going the same direction he was.
Okay, all right, I see that. Then the second point was when she's in there and she's letting the oxygen out, and then Kowalski shows up again and he starts to open the door, and I'm like, what the? Okay, hold on. No matter how bad things are for him, he's an experienced vet. out there in space, he knows better than to jeopardize the life of a colleague by exposing them to the vacuum of space.
You're one of those people.
I was like, there's no way he would do that. She would explode or freeze to death. And then I was like, okay, it's a dream. It's a dream. This is going to be something. Okay, then I'll let it go. But
because everybody knows that if you just hide your face with a newspaper,
right,
the vacuum of space. Well, that's the lesson. It's the Tom lesson.
Did Steve? And I'm honestly not calling you out at all. At what point did you think that it might be in her head or not?
As soon as he opened the door. I was like, that's not him. He wouldn't. It seemed out of line with his character that they established as.
Okay.
He spent all these time. So as soon as he opened the door, I was like, okay, this is something she's passed out. She's, dreaming. She's doing something, and so his character is coming in, with all. It's basically her memory of him to, and the scene worked for me because what information he provided was things that she knew. It was her subconscious reminding her, hey, these things. Mm-hmm. So that worked for me. But just for a split second, it was like, whoa, wait a second. He wouldn't do that. All right, I'll accept it and move on. But I guess, as I said,
I loved that he knew right where the booze was. That was epic.
But let me say, they are, I still enjoy Jurassic Park, even though, no one knows where the goat goes. The same thing with this. They're minor little flaws. They do not, detract from my overall enjoyment of the film. It was just on first viewing, but again, story was consistent. I definitely still enjoyed it, but again, there's a lot of. I'm really surprised at how strong a positive response there has been to this film, and that it's just it has ruled the box office for 3 weekends in a row, which is great. But I walked away going, there are some problems with this film, but again, those are story pieces, and I think really what this film is celebrating is that immersive theatrical experience of really losing yourself in the film. And there's no film that I can think of in recent time that has done such a good job of that as this film, and it has to be seen in the theater. I really don't know how this will carry over into home theater, and I regret people that don't see it in the theater that then rent it on Blu-ray and go, yeah, it was okay. I don't see what the big deal was, because
can we go
IMAX 3D is an absolute necessity, I feel, to really see this film.
Did everybody see it, IMAX 3D, of us?
I did.
Oh, yeah.
I was described the film by a friend, and it was still incredibly gripping. No, I didn't. I actually just saw it on. I didn't see it on IMAX or 3D. I just saw it in a normal theater, which I know was a bad call, but it was still.
That's like sense around.
But I'm still a huge fan of it. Like it even works then. Okay. I was told by many friends that Sandra Bullock's tears look amazing in 3D, and I made a mistake, and that's okay. But more importantly,
made a mistake.
To the credit,
most of us still like you. Steve has lost all respect.
I know, because if you go see it while on NyQuil and see it in the 3D, and then the IMAX, you'll really, really enjoy it. I'm sure.
It's like watching 2001 on acid.
No, but I'm saying that
like that time Trey Parker and Matt Stone went to the Oscars in dresses while on acid.
Right.
Just like that.
It's like how I watched 42. That was on acid. And I was like, what? That's a reference to nothing. No, but Steve, what I'm saying, I mean, to your point, is that even without 3D, even without IMAX, I was still completely entranced and terrified.
Oh, okay.
And completely involved with it. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
If I can tell my other dumb anecdote from the theater, is when George Clooney knocks on the door, as is already sort of been figured out, and then opens it, and she's like, no, and sort of shields her face, and they have their whole huge talk. I was in a pretty full theater, probably like 2/3, and when the camera did that pan from them together to him to her and then back over, and it turns out that George Clooney wasn't there, the amount of people in the theater that went, oh, was really shocking because I felt like the film had sorry, hold on, had taught us so much about how space works that that they were surprised that you can't just be like, hey, can I come into your space capsule? Is that cool? Unlock, come in, have a talk. That they were really confused and surprised, like a Shyamalan twist, that George Clooney wasn't actually there the entire time. And I was honestly like, part of me was like, are you all like the stupidest people in the world? And the other part of me was like, oh, like what a great way to see a movie. Like, how much fun is it to be in your head that you're like, oh, well, thank God George Clooney didn't go away. He just showed up and knocked on the door and says it's a hell of a story. And also pressurization doesn't exist. So you can just sort of shield your face and then you're cool. Did that go on too long? I'm starting to get tired now. All right.
That was good. That was good.
Shyamalan twist. That's fantastic. Okay, so I think we all agree that the camera is great.
Oh my God,
that was amazing. That was pretty breathtaking.
Real quick, I do want to say one thing about the screenplay since I didn't really get to say that much about it.
Oh, Andy, I am so sorry.
Sorry,
no, really.
No, I'm going to be real quick. I just want to say I think Sandra Bullock does an amazing job of having to talk by herself, because there are a lot of actors that I see in films that have like I'm by myself talking to myself dialogue, and they can't pull it off. You feel like, why are they talking? There is no logical reason for them to be talking like this out loud. I think Sandra Bullock actually pulls it off in a way where I buy it, and I feel I totally bought into everything that she was saying, all of her little one-offs that she was throwing out there. That's all.
Oh, that's a really neat point, actually. No, he's totally right. Like, to be so unself-conscious, and to just seem like you're in the moment when you know that you're talking to just the audience. That's really smart. That's really right. I agree. I'm with Andy. I'm drunk. All right.
Let's see.
We talk about talk about sound.
Okay, we can do that. Whatever you want to talk about.
I was just going to say, because I mean, we've talked about the visuals, but the other thing that I think really, in terms of, being immersed in this, is the sound design. In terms of when you're in space, that sound doesn't really travel because there's no air, and how they sort of portray that. So things, as they're working on the station, sounds being muffled. It really gives you that sense of being out there. But also the score, which goes from very quiet to like chaotic,
bombastic.
Yes, and I don't know that you call it music. It's just sound and noise, but it works so well to again create that mood, that tension, that feel of the film. That to me, those are the pieces that I recall most from the film. Is I'm amazed at the choices the director made with the camera, but also just the sound and how it was used to create the environment we're in, but also to create an otherworldly score, for lack of a better term. It wasn't, the orchestra, with strings and all this. It was something else, which was appropriate for the location we were at. And it felt very fitting. And
I'm glad you said that. I had said earlier that the score itself, like the music, for me was pretty forgettable. Like I don't remember it as a scored film.
Right.
But I do remember the sound, and there were little things that I found I was mesmerized by regarding the sound, and one in particular was the sound that they captured of things happening inside the suits, right? So when they were like screwing things in with mechanical, like with the electric screwdriver, you would hear the sound, but it wouldn't be the sound that you would normally hear. It was like the muffled sound as if it was coming up through your hand in the suit,
Right.
It was more like vibration sound, and I thought that stuff was incredible. Just the amount of kind of complex Foley work they did. As far as I understand it, they filmed all that stuff, or they recorded all of that stuff underwater through suits to try and capture that muffled that muffled
Interesting.
sound, and with great intention, right, to capture that kind of vibrational, like bone conductive vibration sound that that I thought was really special. But in general, the way it bounced around from the sound in the suit to the sounds in the capsules to the silence of space, I thought was really dramatic.
Even in the in my
This is it.
Sorry.
This is it.
No,
He's
no.
going. He's going. We're losing. We've got to Tommy down.
Nope.
I was waiting for the thump as he hit the floor.
I'm sorry. That was a really long, tough swallow. Even in my dumb IMAX 3D theater, I, like a child person, when in the very, very beginning, because we're talking about the sound, when some of the first space reports start happening, I looked up to the top right of my theater.
Yeah.
Because the sound was only coming from one distinct part, and it was so quiet that I was actually angry, like, who's talking in the theater that I was in?
Yes.
And then I kind of was like, oh, right, I'm not an idiot, and now I get it. But the sound design is phenomenal and is actually really like other people were saying, like, so built for a theater in such a non-showy way, is especially because, I mean, the opening of the film is so quiet for so long, and then you just start to get these little things, and the amount of from the right, and it was always from the right, but from the right back, from the right middle, from the right front, and then both, and all these kind of things. The sound design really helped make you feel how horrible I'm sorry that I feel that space is the worst thing in the world, but like but just like how horribly infinite and quiet it is, and how our little part of these four people, I don't remember, floating in space, the amount of like the small impact that's making in the infinite of space was really, made clear by the opening of the sound, because it was just like this tiny little noises. Was that
No, I wanted to ask Steve and Andy, did you guys happen to catch this in an Atmos theater?
No, because Atmos does not mix IMAX projection at this point. So I've only seen it in IMAX.
Oh, okay.
I do have a friend who saw it in Atmos, and he said, reading from his email, he said, wow, 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 talk about ear opening. And he's super technical, so this is a technical email. And it didn't even use the height speakers all that much. Even the dialogue, what little there was, placement utilized the entire speaker array in a totally enveloping fashion. So
yeah, that's the impression I got from the reviews of the Atmos version that I've seen, was that as stunning as the IMAX 3D is to your overall visual kind of perceptive experience, that this film took advantage of Atmos in a completely new way.
What's Atmos? I'm sorry.
It's the
Do I know
new
what that
Dolby.
is?
It's the new Dolby system that has even more speakers.
Yeah, it's like 7,000 speakers. They're all very small.
And Andy, that makes sense, because I could see, from my Dolby Atmos experiences in Wolverine and Man of Steel, I always felt that, too much noise, you lose that finesse. And I could really see how this film would have that. You have that ability to have that finesse with sound because of just the precision and accuracy of specific sounds, that it's not just creating a wall of sound, it's very specific and purposeful. So that was my one regret, was that IMAX, you don't have the Atmos experience.
Exactly.
I do have to say one thing about silence in a movie, which I'm such a huge fan of. The one thing that sucks about silence in a movie theater is the fact that you're in a movie theater.
Yeah,
you're hearing everyone else.
Yeah, because other people are hell. That's a phrase, I think, that was Chekhov. I'm going to keep saying Chekhov. No, but I mean, it's just like there's just so much rustling, and people are really uncomfortable with silence. There was laughing for no reason during
yeah,
the
because
film that I saw, just because
people
people
can't
don't know
take
how
it.
to handle it.
Yeah,
they
they can't
don't know
take
how to
it.
handle it. Yeah, which is interesting, I guess. To me.
It was,
Well-
but speaking to the movie, and you're right. I mean, the theatrical experience is always going to be a frustrating one with an audience because people just aren't us. If I could watch it with an audience of me's, that would be great.
Oh, totally. Because you put your phone away. You literally, I can't believe there's so many, like, before the movie things saying literally, don't be Hitler, put your phone away. Like, don't be a jerk. And then everyone's just like, that's cool. I know, right? But I'm not one of those. Let me check my text. It's so weird. Now I feel like a terrible stand-up comedian, and it's like, and also airplane food. but I mean, like, I can't understand that people don't understand that. I don't understand.
Okay.
Well,
Andy, go ahead.
yes.
I'm sorry.
No, I just think,
No,
Andy,
wanna
weren't you
do
going to say
more-
something?
I want to do more of my bits from the 90s. Look, guys, women and men, they're totally different. Women are all like, what? Feelings, and men are all like, football. All right. I should really stop talking.
I don't even know
How do you follow that?
I don't even know how to recover.
I think
Somebody
we
step back from the podcast.
Right, I'm done. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm so sorry.
Where were we before we started this? Andy was going to say something. I'm sure of it. We were
I
talking about
lost it. That's
sound.
all
We were
right.
talking about
Something about
silence, the
silence.
value of silence.
Yeah. Speaking to what Steve was saying, I remember now. Okay, but I really like the way they kept the silence consistent all the way through, where they had, in the context of everything going on in space, they left it with this amazing silence with everything, where even when she is trying to unhinge the parachute thing from that space station that she's on, you don't hear any of these, particles that are zipping behind her, smashing it to smithereens. I love the way that all of that is played in silence all the way through the film, and then the way that they contrast that with this score as they use the score to create those moments. And I think, yes, it's not that listenable of a score by itself, but it's one of the most effective scores I have heard in context of the film because of the way that it's used as a tool to fill in for the lack of sound.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I certainly buy that. I mean, I just don't remember it. I honestly, I don't remember
I don't think
it.
you're meant to remember. It's not John Williams in the back with all of his strings. It's a very like Steve said, it's a very much almost just like instruments, it's very discordant. It's just this sound that is kind of blasted at you, but it's done in a way where it feels like you're getting the tension of the explosions, and you're it's building all of that, and I find it that extremely effective.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was too. I mean, just the whole experience of the catastrophe. I remember as an audible experience, but
Yeah,
I don't remember a theme.
Oh,
There is?
there isn't.
Because it just opens, right? I mean, it just opens, right? I mean, it opens and they're working, and we have the 13 minutes, right? Is there?
I think
There's
it
that
starts. There's a big build.
Yeah.
You
Right.
get the title, and then it cuts to Earth and
Yeah.
silence until the shuttle drifts up toward us.
Right. Just you can find it online. If you've got a Spotify account, you can play it on there. Just listen to it once, and you go, oh yeah, I remember these sounds. You may not be able to remember the exact sequence, and actually the tracks I think are. I don't even know if the names have anything to do with parts of the film at all. Some of them might. But you listen to it once, and you go, oh yeah, this, I remember these sounds, but again, it's not going to give you, oh yeah, that's that, this point when they do that, or this is the part where she's escaping. It's just, oh yeah, I remember these sounds, and they set me on edge because this is a really tense moment. And that's
It
which
does-
I think is.
No, sorry. It does kind of what for space and the particular situation. It does for that what Trent Reznor did for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, creating again not a score I could remember at all, but it has an incredibly icy feel all the way through, and the way that he kind of built that score around that icy world in that film, I think it's kind of comparable to that. Not one that I remember, but one that works well in the context of the film.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about cinematography. Emmanuel Lubezki.
There's a great article from the American Society of Cinematographers that we should post in the show notes. Just kind of, it's a short little blog post, just an interview with him where he kind of talks about really what a cinematographer does on a movie like this, because a lot of people are always like, well, it's mostly visual effects. What do you actually do? And he explains it really nicely, just trying to give a sense as to how he really has to collaborate with the visual effects supervisor to really kind of create the overall look of everything that we're seeing in the film, even when it's completely digital and he really isn't running a camera on any of it. It still is important to know how things are going to get lit once you go into that visual element and everything. And so it's a nice little piece that kind of helps explain the relationship of that and why a cinematographer is still important in a film that has almost nothing but visual effects.
Yeah, that was my big question for you guys, and I think it revolves around Oscars more than anything else. And I wonder if in some way this is not some kind of a push to have more of these sort of, let me just explain that a cinematographer, the importance of a cinematographer, even in a heavy effects film, is all about really understanding light. And here's how we work with light, and here's how we effect light. Because I wonder if he's either going to win cinematography for this film because of that, or if he's going to lose because nobody understands it and thinks of this as such an effects film.
He's still going to win, just like Life of Pi did. I think that he's definitely going to beat out Roger Deakins for The Prisoner, and Roger Deakins will lose out again. But I think a lot of it also involves what they invented for this film and the way that they created these lighting tools that would track as the actors were flipping around in their little cycle machines or whatever, just so they could actually then go in and create the visual effects to show the Earth behind. They did a lot of really amazing visual effects trickery in Life of Pi as well. He managed to pull off his Oscar for that, and I think that this is going to be the Oscar this year.
But the Life of Pi took place on Earth.
Well, it took place on Earth, but it was vastly all visual effects.
Oh no, absolutely. But I'm kind of going with Pete in the way, not necessarily that Pete was explaining that, but like the idea that like.
Wait, saying I was wrong?
Earth,
what is that?
What I'm saying is Pete is a horrible person. No,
he was wrong, but I agree with him
for different reasons.
Right. That the fact that Life of Pi was so much CGI and so much visual effects, but it took place on Earth, I think will be definitely taken differently than something that takes place in space. Because when something takes place in space, people are just assuming that it's all trickery. I think that there's a good chance that the cinematographer will not get the credit that he deserves.
Well, we'll find out next March.
And then
We will.
Somebody's gonna come to my house and give me an apology.
Does that make sense? Said that?
No, it does to me, and I think for me it's a different, it's a different reason, and I don't know. I mean, I think Life of Pi, the one of the reasons that it makes sort of cinematography such a powerful, even in such a heavy effects film, is that everything was, I think, to the general audience was very believable, right? I mean, it's water, it's animals, it's moving the camera around things that are sort of faking reality in a way that we have experienced, right? It's a hyper experience of this sort of reality.
That's what I was trying to say.
And I think Claudio Miranda did an unbelievably good job, in moving the camera in that space, right? I mean, that's very powerful. And I think in Gravity, we don't have any reference point, right? We don't have any sense because we've never been there. The number of people who've been there who've actually seen it is so small that we have no reference point, and I wonder if that's going to get in the way of it. We should say that to Andy's point, what they invented. If you haven't gone onto YouTube and seen the sort of gyro Clooney scope thing. What are they? I don't know what they called it, but the box, the 360 degree box.
I think it's a gyro Clooney.
It's a gyro Clooney that they the box that they put the actors into, Sandra Bullock in, to spin her, and they projected. It's like the ultimate sort of Google Earth kind of space view, right? And they projected it so that you would see the projection on her, reflecting on the helmet, and then go in afterward and build the CG around her. It's really spectacular technology that they used to actually, gimbal this movie to life. But it's a non-traditional cinematography, and I think that's something that I wonder if we'll see a celebration of that.
I think that's a much better way to say what I was trying to say, is that he definitely deserves it, but there's a good chance that he won't get it just because it's just too new.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that, in the trailer, there's the shot where, she first is sort of breaks loose, and we see her spinning, and then she comes around and the camera locks on her, and now she's stationary and we're moving. A shot like that, I'm like, that blew me away. And then when we're in outer space, and then I go to the movie we're watching, and the camera's out here, and we're coming into Sandra Bullock, where the camera's slowly moving in, and then we move through her helmet into her helmet, and then we move around inside the helmet and then back out as one, continuous shot. And at several points I had to say to myself, clearly what the camera's showing right now is just got to all be blue screen. So clearly there could be a cut here, but, we're being faked out by, the CG Earth in the background or whatever. I mean, these long tracking shots, there can clearly be cuts there. But my mind doesn't catch onto those because it's just also fluid and logical. And I thought that the composition of, that's the master plan of where this camera is going to be, because in all that chaos out there, I always had a sense of where we were, in terms of, we didn't have, chaos cinema where it's just things are crazy and what's going on. We didn't have jiggly monkey, shaky cams. It was a lot of things going on. But to me, there was that balance of the smooth fluidity of the camera that gave us that sense of where we were, because it would be very easy to be disoriented when we're, there's, parachute things going and debris coming around and where are we, and to create that sense of panic. But there was always that, the camera was always in the right place for me. And I thought those were the tough choices to make in this film so that the audience would always know where we were, where she was going, where she was coming from. And I think that's, the other piece that is part of the success of this film is, given that you basically have a virtual camera that you can place anywhere, to have that discretion to know what's the right place to put it, because that's where it needs to be, not to put it someplace else because you've got no physical limitations of where you can put it.
Steve, I'm really loath to agree with you, more than once on a show, but in this case, I feel like I have to shout out at that. I think one of the the opening 13 minutes of this film, it's certainly the most powerful 13 minutes, I think, that we get on so many different levels throughout the film itself, that it works on every single level for me. Now, where I get a little bit frustrated by kind of the individual sort of little nitpicky aspects of the dialogue. I move past that because it gets me into the film. It sets a stage so quickly and moves us into the debris field so quickly that it sets us up for this action yet to come. The camera, we get to experiment with the camera. We get to be in that sort of first-person shooter kind of Star Tours effect of the camera, which gets us into the world of the film so effectively, unbelievably effectively, that we the sound, the way they apply the sound, all of the elements come together that allow us to avoid one huge win, which is that we don't have a half hour of setup on Earth. We don't ever meet Ed Harris. Like all of those things, we don't ever see the rescue mission. Like all of those things, I think, are answered in those first 13 minutes where they lose contact. We're in the film so fast, and we get to move into the story of Sandra Bullock and her escape from space, which I think is the most powerful part of it. So I think it's really, I mean, this movie, these elements come together in a really spectacular way. Shall we? Do we have any other anecdotes that we need before we move on to ranking? And
I just want to. I think we should talk about unless you don't want to, but I for one really enjoyed all the rebirth stuff. I liked the umbilical womb scene. I really liked all of the elements at the end with the rebirth. I totally bought into all of that. I really enjoyed, as part of her character arc, how she. And I thought that I liked how she was written. I didn't think that it was a poorly written woman character. I thought it was not that stereotypical. I enjoyed elements to her, and I enjoyed her fight for survival. I really enjoyed the story of her daughter. I enjoyed the scene where she's, kind of at a loss, and she's barking like a dog, and in one shot, you see her just barking like a dog, and then you see that transition as she's just kind of, trying to connect to this person on Earth, all of a sudden changing over to realizing that she's going to die, and like right at that moment, and the way that her barking changes and shifts, and that whole scene, I totally bought into all of that. I really enjoyed all of the stuff with her daughter, saying goodbye to her daughter. I loved all of that, and I really enjoyed the rebirth. I know some people may find it kind of just cliche and stereotypical, but I bought in wholeheartedly.
Some people, I think you're talking to me.
No,
I think that some people was directed at me. Am I wrong?
Some people on this show, yes, but outside in the rest of the world, I have talked to a number of people who have problems with this film, who feel like it's just, it's all spectacle with no substance. They didn't really enjoy the characters. Just stuff that I don't really agree with, and from people that I really shouldn't be listening to in the first place. But I did hear people complaining about all that sort of stuff. Maybe I'm just a sucker, and I easily get caught up in those emotional sorts of stories in a film. I acknowledge that it's true. I am a bit of a sucker when it comes to emotional moments, but it worked for me so well in this film, and I really enjoyed the thread of rebirth with her character over the course of the story.
I would not. I mean, I don't disagree with you on many of those points, and I think the concept of rebirth in the film, and the concept of just sort of I think it starts with the idea of sort of breaking the tether, right? I mean, that's where we start with this journey of like cutting the umbilical and figuring out, what we see in the scope of this film, of this sort of 6 hours of her life in space, is her growing up and figuring out what kind of a woman she's going to be when she gets her feet back on solid ground, and I think that's a really powerful story, and the only problem that I had with it were just those sort of on-the-nose visual elements that are hammering me into my head of, this is rebirth now. We're rebirthing, go! I just found the floating, the floating fetus thing was just a little much, but to that point, I loved the rescue. I loved her landing in the water, and I think her just almost drowning, kind of gasping for air as she's making this final push back to life. That idea of being in the water and emerging from the water as that sort of metaphor for her rebirth, I thought was really powerful. I was disappointed, and I don't mean to pull too much on the Chekhov trope, but Chekhov was the one who said that if you see a Clooney floating off into space, you better see his body slam to earth in the third act. And I feel like we didn't see that, and I think that was a real loss.
And I don't know about your audience, but my entire audience, we were like 100% expecting like a crocodile to appear. Like things could not have kept getting worse for her as she's trying to get out of that pond. We're just like, oh God, where's the shark? Where's the crocodile? Oh, for God's sakes. There's going to be a lion on the
Oh my
shore.
God, a typhoon.
Can I say my final things?
Yes, say your final things.
And I apologize. I went away for a little bit, so I apologize if some of these things have already been said. When her spacecraft landed in the water and then she was now drowning, my first thought was like, oh my God. Like, we're still, there was just so much tension and now she's about to drown. But then I actually really, even apart from the rebirth, I liked the idea, and I think we brought it up earlier, of water. Pete, you brought up the abyss, is that space is kind of the equivalent to the ocean.
Right.
For us, I think. Yeah. It's such a huge, uncharted, scary, terrifying, there's no way we can live. Wait, let me check in. Did we already talk about this?
No, not really.
No, not really.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There's no way. I liked the idea that she was, when she came home, that she was immediately immersed, literally, in the next space. Meaning space is something that is horrible, and we can't possibly figure out how to do it without our own personal apparatuses, and there's no gravity in the ocean. There's no gravity in water. There's no gravity in space. The biggest thing missing for both of those is leverage. You just touch something and you spin away. So I kind of liked that she also, when she was being saved, coming back to Earth, that she went into the water, because the water is also the exact kind of thing as space. We can't breathe. There's no way to actually get your feet under you. There's no real gravity, and there's no leverage. And so it's just as terrifying on ground. We have something as terrifying on ground as we do up in the heavens. So there was something kind of interesting to me about that. The last thing, and I don't know if I'm being stupid, but I'm going to keep talking. I love my voice. The other thing that I loved was just the time that it took of her once she did get out of the capsule and just to really spend on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was a long time that she just spent on the beach, just sort of in the sand. And the friend that I went to watch asked me, like, what, that seemed really weird, like that spent so long there. And for me, and it was probably the most obvious answer in the world, but it was just like she was finally feeling the one thing that was missing was gravity.
Yeah.
Right.
Was gravity, was leverage, was her own weight, where she could pick herself up slowly off the beach and be in control of her own body. And that was the one thing that was the biggest villain of this entire movie, was the lack of gravity and the lack of leverage. And that was the big win for me, of like, you're finally feeling your own weight.
And I liked the way that they played on that at the end of the film with the camera, and they kept the camera so low that we were like, literally, she was towering over us like a giant. And it really put that gravity into perspective, because you really could feel like every footstep as it came down, it just felt that much heavier.
Oh, it was enormous. Yeah. And it was so great to have it, of course, in water and then on sand, because where else can you see your own footprint?
Yeah.
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 You can't see it on asphalt.
Yeah, that's another great point, that
sand.
This was the only place that you get to actually visualize the impact that she has as a human. Mm-hmm. Right, is what she can touch, is the everything else that she's been doing for the last week has been destroyed.
Well, and there's a little bit more to that. In an interview, our director said, was asked about if this was, about this rebirth idea and pulling yourself up onto the surface, and he says, well, yes, more literally there, she's in these murky waters, almost like an amniotic fluid or a primordial soup in which you see amphibians swimming. She crawls out of the water, not unlike early creatures in evolution, and then she goes on all fours. And after going on all fours, she's a bit curved until she is completely erect. It was the evolution of life in one quick shot.
No, I don't actually like that.
Yeah,
but,
now it means less. Now that
now
go.
it seems a little bit.
Now it's a little too on the nose.
Now it's a little on the nose.
I thought I had made it too obvious, but fair enough.
And see, I like that.
I did.
But that's
I
just
did
me
too.
being a sucker again.
No, you're not a sucker. You are a sucker. Let me correct that. You are a sucker. I am too on this one. I really, that part of the bit I liked.
Yeah.
So okay, shall we do this thing? Let's do it.
What's happening?
Let's rank it.
We're
Are
going
we
to
all
flick
gonna
chart,
make
and
this?
then Tom's
Oh.
going to say, "What's flick chart again? Remind me," and then we'll remind him, and
Yeah,
then we'll
come on,
rank.
go ahead, Tom. We need a segue.
At least Tom won't say, "What's flip chart?"
What's happening right now? Because I'm already naked.
Okay, Tom, what I need you to do is I need you to get on your computing device, head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. That's where you and all of our listeners can find our golden list, our top 100. Well, you can find all of them, but really the ones that count are the top 100 of of the films that we have reviewed
Not familiar.
over the last 2 years. Not familiar. This is how many
No.
times have you been on?
I don't know.
Doesn't even
What's
matter.
that?
Hello?
What's that?
Hello?
I'm on Friendster. What do I click on Friendster?
And scene.
Anything you want.
All right.
Okay, so here we go. Gravity or The Bourne Identity? I'm totally Gravity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go Gravity.
Gravity.
Gravity or World War Z? I'm still Gravity.
Oh.
Oh, definitely Gravity.
I did like the World War Z.
I did too, but
He likes zombies with everything, though.
yeah.
If this had
Gravity with
would have
zombies.
been better if it had zombies in space.
Now,
right?
now we're talking.
What if she heard over the radio that a zombie
And
apocalypse
it was a zombie
happened?
apocalypse.
Would she still be trying to get back to Earth, or would she just give up?
I would like it if George Clooney turned out to be a zombie. Then
That's
she
the
would have been
sequel.
weird
Or
when
the
he knocked on
pilot,
her
right?
door.
The pilot
Oh,
on the
the-
shuttle, or the guy who was floating around
Oh.
in the bay. They should have zombified
Well, they already
them.
destroyed one of their brains.
Zomstronauts. I'm going to go Gravity on this one. I'm going to regret it, but
No, you're not. Gravity or All the President's Men?
Oh. Oh,
Oh,
that feels like an affront. Gravity or All the President's Men? For me, All the President's Men. My name is Tommy.
I would go Gravity in the theatrical experience, because All the President's Men, I can happily watch that sitting in front of my television.
Very
in the
good point.
context of the greater film, like the film that has a lot more meaning, I would definitely go All the President's Men. So I don't know which one I'm picking. I'll let you.
was-
choose this one.
Steve,
Oh,
this is a WWSD. What would Steve do?
Yeah, well, because there's I have some problems with Gravity in that her story arc. It's why I feel like I need a second viewing, because there's so much visually going on that to really focus on story and character, I think, is part of what a second viewing will bring. I hope, because I feel like there's all the pieces there, but there was just so much going on that it's
No,
almost
it definitely helped me on a second viewing.
yeah. So that's like I'm like torn, because I feel like I really want more out of the character piece, which is what All the President's Men. You've got such great writing in there, but I mean, you come out of Gravity, out of the theatrical experience, just like speechless, and it's you've been in another world for 90 minutes, and I would go towards Gravity on this side.
No.
Because of that wow, it just amazed me. It's such a
Sure.
technical piece, the screenplay, the script, maybe there's some issues, but I feel like it's one that
This is why you go to the movies, because this
Right,
is a movie from
exactly.
beginning to end that
Yeah.
is a theatrical experience that knocks your socks off. I actually
Exactly.
left the theater and was driving home and got so disoriented driving because I still felt like I was in space that I almost had to stop the car because I totally had a freak out.
Are you sure you don't have some sort of a condition?
I'm on NyQuil too. Did I forget to mention that?
Oh my God, NyQuil is the best.
I'm-
Also, Gravity
Isn't
might
it?
unseat a seated president, so there's also that. Timely. What?
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 I'm actually I'm All the President's Men with no qualms.
Hey,
And
Pete.
I feel like I feel like it's because all of the things that you guys have said is true, and this film will leave the theaters, and in 10 years, I believe we're still going to be talking about All the President's Men in a way that is different than we're going to be thinking about Gravity.
Y'all just got Pete Wrighted.
Woo! Oh my God! You guys did it's not like Popcorn Pete and Artsy Andy. It's like you guys switched this week. What's going on?
I feel like Steve.
It's now like Pretentious Pete and
yeah,
Action Andy.
Action Andy. Yeah,
that's right.
All right. So Andy, are you the tiebreaker?
I've got the button. So
you've got
Gravity
the button.
it is. Gravity it is.
Dang it.
Wait, how is Andy the tiebreaker since there's only 4 of us?
Because he's got the button.
Oh, okay. We don't have notes from anybody else?
I have the password.
I've got
I thought my vote counted twice.
I'm gonna change the password and re-rank.
No.
Oh, man.
All right, what's next?
Gravity or 500 Days of Summer? See, we already have 500 Days of Summer ahead of All the President's Men. This is why we have to go through and re-rank the chart.
I have to pick Gravity over. You guys gave way too much love to 500 Days of Summer, in my opinion.
You didn't give enough.
I enjoy it, but it's
look,
way
Mr. Cameron Crowe hater.
Oh, that's a separate discussion. We'll do that.
Wait till this week.
Yeah,
I know. We're gonna do a whole series.
Guys, I hate it when you fight.
I also am Gravity in this case.
What's the question?
Gravity or 500 Days of Summer?
Oh, 500 Days of Summer is adorable, but no, Gravity. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Gravity or Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh.
What?
Gravity or Raiders?
You have to ask?
It's Raiders.
Gravity or what?
It's Raiders.
Raiders.
Yeah.
It's totally Raiders.
It's Raiders.
Gravity.
Tom, it's not. It's probably not Raiders for Tom.
I literally haven't heard the question. What?
Raiders of the Lost Ark, Tom.
He doesn't hold Raiders
Mic
up.
check.
Or Gravity?
Yes.
Oh, maybe I'll be a jerk face.
Your vote doesn't count. Doesn't matter.
You've already lost.
You're
But
already
I'm dead
outnumbered.
curious.
Oh, what? What's wrong?
I'm curious.
I'm a
What do
person.
you pick? Tell me your pick.
What does Pete think?
What does Pete think? we have all unilaterally picked Gravity and so on your behalf by proxy we have picked Gravity. But I'm curious where you would stand if you were standing alone and had to pick Gravity or Raiders.
Raiders of the Lost Ark? Oh, I guess first and foremost, what is Flickchart? All right.
Okay.
All right, I know, I get it. I'm a stupid person. I will pick I think I would pick Gravity.
Okay, there you go. Just making sure.
Was that wrong?
No, I mean I
There is no wrong or right.
there there's
Well, there is. There's an emotionally wrong or right.
So wait, what did we pick? I've already forgotten.
Like if
What's
someone
next?
said
The Counselor, I think, over Raiders. Is that what we did?
What's
like
next?
if someone said Grown Ups 2 versus like Schindler's List. If I said Grown Ups 2, clearly that's the wrong answer.
Yes, that would be the wrong answer.
Yes, that's true. That is
All
very
right,
true.
was that the
All
next
right.
answer?
Next.
Because
Gravity or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
I would go Gravity.
my name is Tom Metz. I would say Butch Cassidy.
It's been a long time since I've seen Butch Cassidy, so I'm sort of swayed towards the Gravity side because it's just more current in memory. And I enjoyed Butch Cassidy, but it's a faint memory out there, so it's hard to base it on specific strengths of each. So I'm skewed towards Gravity, and Andy's got the button.
I've got the button, but for you, Pete, I will do Butch Cassidy.
Oh,
See, I'm
Andy,
a giver.
That's
thank
fair.
you.
Gravity. This is our last one. Gravity or
Wait, can I
Sleepless?
change my vote
No.
slightly?
No.
It's Butch Cassidy, but only
Gravity.
if the raindrops keep falling on my head sequence is forever gone.
All right, we'll
That's a
recount
terrible
it.
sequence of movie history.
Gravity or
Nope.
Sleepless in Seattle?
Okay, fine.
Gravity.
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 And we are at number 6. out of 116.
All right.
What did we, Andy? Could you? I know this is a huge pain for you on Flickchart, but could you tell us what we knocked out of the top 100?
Yes. I can.
Raindrops keep falling on
Yeah,
my
sing
head.
the song for a moment.
Right?
Paul.
It's so
I'm
bad.
on a bicycle and
It's
I
such a
should
good
be
movie,
on
but
a
that part
horse.
sucks. It's
Yeah.
like the
All right,
world's
number-
first- Oh, what?
Number 100 is Bull Durham. Number 101, which has just been bumped out, is Key Largo.
Ooh, wow.
Ooh.
That might be there's a couple in the ones that have been bumped out that saddens me a little bit. There are
they
some
could
that
use
are fine.
a re-ranking, yeah.
Yeah, but Key
God.
Largo is definitely it's still a good one.
We
so.
should re-rank Key Largo and just see if it beats Bull Durham. I would be up for that.
I know you would.
Hey, this was fun, people. This movie is, it's still, I don't know if you've seen it. It's a little film called Gravity. It's still in theaters. You should go see it. You should probably see it on IMAX. If you've already seen it IMAX 3D, you should go see it on Atmos. And let us know on Facebook.com/thenextreel what you thought of it. And you can always find us at thenextreel.com. You can read the fantastic works of Dr. Sarmento at thenextreel.com/blog. And follow us on Twitter at thenextreel. That's pretty much. Oh, the Pony Prize. Do we have a new movie this week, Andy, that you're working on?
Yeah, I
middle
am
of it, right?
three images in on our Instagram,
And nobody has won it yet.
Nobody's figured it out. It's been definitely obscure. I think if Tommy looked at it, he might be able to figure it out. But
since he doesn't have a computer,
he's so hopped up. I think the NyQuil may help him. But yeah, he's still is using his little abacus over there. So
What's the internet?
So that's it, guys. As always, thank you for your time and attention. Good film, good talk. I'm so glad we didn't do that other joker of a film.
boy, so am I.
Tommy, thank you. Sleep well, son.
Thank you. I love you, America.
Steve, as always. Good
As
night, sir.
always.
Good night,
Good
sir.
night.
Andy, good night.
So long.